this is Paul here, and just that crazy random guy that usually comments on a lot of YouTube videos and says crazy stuff on the internet. And maybe you know me, maybe you don't. I don't know. But I just try to. I don't go on the camera because I'm goofy looking, and I do like to have some sense of privacy, so that's why I don't show up on the camera. But I had some thoughts traveling here in state of Illinois, and I was thinking there is a way to electrify farming. So, because everyone wants to do this, right? How do we want to do this? They want to go. Tired of this nasty diesel smoke right there. Yeah, you know that diesel smoke. Because basically you have. Well, tractor wouldn't drive across the field in this direction, obviously, but it's just an idea to show that there is a tractor, and most farming these days is done with a vehicle. Usually it's a tractor or a cab unit like a combine or some other piece of equipment, which is pulling the actual equipment that moves the alters the landscape or does something with the plants. So you have like tillers, scrapers, cultivators, seeders, things that take spray tanks and spray the plants, but it's always pulled by some tractor or attached to some similar equipment. But this is my little generic sketch of a tractor here. And that's usually how it's done. And most people are thinking electrifying farming. You want to make the tractor electric, right? So you want to do something like this. You want to go, alright, let's make this sucker electric, right? Like, put a big battery in it, but I think that is not the way to do it. So it's not a battery. It's, if you're going to electrify farming, so we have batteries, right? Batteries, but if I can draw like the logo. Without electrifying farming, so make that crazy neon green like the full battery, right? So you're thinking, okay, we're going to do it with the battery, right? The little battery logo here. I'm just trying to draw it because I don't have. Someone can do an animatic base or animation based on idea. I don't have the time for it. I'm technically supposed to be doing other things, so you have your little battery. But guess what? Guess what about the battery? It's not going to be the battery either. How are we going to electrify farming? Well, actually, the best way to do it is I'm going to tell you in a little bit. I'm going to break your whiteboard immersion somewhat. Jump out of the whiteboard here. Turn off the layer. And we're going to get rid of, clear this layer too. So I'll do it like that. Yep. I wanted it clear, but not. How did I do it? I don't know. I wanted a transparent layer, but I guess it did background fill instead. Paint layer with transparency, and let's get rid of this layer. So, how are we going to do it? We're going to do it with infrastructure. So how do we electrify farming with infrastructure? Well, you gotta think, let's think along the lines of what we want to do. We want to move over a surface, and we want to apply things to the surface. So guess what does that? Alright, if I can draw a freaking straight line. Guess what applies things to a surface? So we're going to get the concept of what we're doing with the field here. It's pretty simple, actually. I can draw better. So I'm trying to do it quick, right? It's quick and ugly. It's not perfect. You know, it's just a sketch doodle. But, what applies things to a surface that is in modern technology that everyone likes talking about, has their videos on, and it's kind of a gimmick or a toy, but it's also pretty cool because you can make your own stuff with it. But it is going to be this idea of an apparatus that has this and an applicator, and here's this thing that comes down, and then you build your little benchy boat, right? It is a 3D printer, right? And pardon my little rough and ugly drawing, but so we have the idea of the 3D printer, right? The print nozzle and glow boat. And what a 3D printer does is you have like this little shuttle head, the print head nozzle. It's on a shuttle kind of thing, and you have a transom, and it moves over a surface, and it applies things to the surface, or it's not really glue, it's plastic, I guess. Melted plastic to the surface to build a thing. But what if we took the idea of applying something to a surface, which is what the tractor in farming does, and borrow from this idea of the 3D printer? So we have a 3D printer, and it applies a material to the surface. But instead of applying like building or construction to the surface, what we will do with the 3D printer idea is apply everything needed to grow crops onto the surface. And it is the same idea, but this is the basis for the infrastructure. So we are going to be changing from driving tractors around to having this kind of 3D printer set up, do the farming, and then you can put it in as infrastructure with the electricity and even a pipeline to run water and all that. But the idea is here. We're going to use this idea. So, like, let's break from the whiteboard again. There. So, how do we do this on a big scale? Well, if you've ever been on the coasts of the country, they'll have like a shipyard, right? The shipyard is this big area, and you'll have your ship over here. On the ship, they will have, pardon my drawings, I know they're quick and dirty and ugly, but it's the concept. Just think of it as like a dry erase board, but I don't have the best time speed drawing, you know, but so we have your ship here, and on the ship there will be those tractor trailer boxes, you know, like stacked up, like 2, 3, 5, some 5 stories tall, man. They load those suckers. They're like all these boxes. And to get the boxes on and off a ship, they'll have 2 cranes. We're interested in one of them because this is how we scale up. The idea is you have this kind of crane, and it picks up. But the kind of crane we're interested in, because we're thinking of how can you scale this up? Well, technology has already scaled this up. So when we load these little boxes here, they're not little, they're semi-truck trailer sized boxes here. You know, you see them double stacked on railroad trains and everything else, but to get them out of the shipyard, you know, they have all these boxes on top of the ship. Then the crane brings them over. You have like the regular cantilever looking kind of crane here. And my ugly drawings. But you have this kind of crane, but then you also have a second crane that the first crane loads out onto the pier, and the second crane is what loads all your trucks or unloads all your trucks. And this is called a entry crane. Basically, you have this thing up here. Pardon my ugly drawing. And it rides on 2 pairs of rails typically. You'll have your semi-trucks pull up here, like, you know. Pardon my ugly little drawings. Semi-truck. And your semi-truck will be loading these boxes. They're standardized pretty much, but pardon my use of colors here. So you got your semi-truck here, and my ugly little drawing here. trying to use colors to make things different. So you have your gantry crane here. You'll have your guy in a cab up here, sitting, and he's riding this thing out. There's like ladders and stuff to climb up. But he comes down with the stuff, and there's this thing that will unload the truck. It's not in the best position, but he drives this crane, and it picks up the big boxes from here. The entry crane guy picks these up and puts them on or off the trucks. So we have something that works like that part of the 3D printer, you know, that whole assembly. And this thing rides on the rails, so you have a rail here. Generally, some don't have rails, but most do, because they are infrastructure. They operate as part of the facility. So, the entry crane has some problems for it, but it has the right idea. We know we can scale this idea up, lifting and placing things on a surface, and that's what cranes do as well, not just 3D printers. So we want the idea of this, and we know we can scale it up, so we have this gantry crane. But it has some problems. When you want to farm, you want every bit of land on the surface to be used for the farm. So these rails are not the right type of rails. And the gantry crane, it has the right idea, but this is probably too high up. Of course, for moving cargo, you want that height and stuff, because you're stacking these things eventually like layers high. Not just one layer here, but there's like 2 or 3 layers before the crane puts them on or takes them off the ship or whatever they're doing in a shipyard. But if you've seen these things operate, you know they have this cab up here and a guy riding around, and he takes the cargo and loads and unloads it in these standardized storage containers, which are on trucks or trains. So you got your little truck here, my ugly little drawing bird, because I'm trying to draw it as fast as possible, you know. So you got something like that. I know it looks like as pardon me, it is the idea. It's an idea that's been floating in my head. So you have this screen up here, you know. Enough of that. So let's move on to the next thing. So how do we get this back to the farm? Can I delete the layer? There's probably a trick to get. I think it's. Beep. Well, that kind of did something, but it isn't what I wanted to do. Alright. I accidentally moved a layer this way I used for doing a stylus instead of a mouse, and I haven't done this in a while. I have a selection. Select. I clicked on the wrong thing, and I don't even realize what I did. So layer here. I lost my farm drag. Son of a bitch. Yeah, pardon me though. Anyhow. So, let's get back to the farm rate. I'm gonna have to draw it all over again. I'm fumble-fingered and trying to work fast. Okay, we got the sky back. Oh, we do have the farm back. Can we turn the sky on? Oh. Okay, pardon me. I don't know why I can't have both on. Is there a way to deselect? Select. I don't know why it's being like this. Anyhow, new layer. One moment, let me get switched to the mouse. New paint layer. I don't know why it's hiding these other layers. I want to be able to see them. I don't know what it's doing. Anyhow, paint layer. Clear this layer. I don't know why I can't see my outer layers here. The frick? I gotta get rid of the selection layer. How do I turn this off? Remove layer. Sorry about this, guys. Man. Something to my idea, and it's like my whiteboard here, and I screwed something up. So, maybe I should just draw it. I don't know why my layers disappeared on me. This idea is to have this on top. Just draw. Well, okay. We had the premise, okay? Pardon the technical difficulties. So, the premise is we have our landscape, big fat farm here, okay. So how are we going to build out the infrastructure? We know we want a big 3D printer over it, and we know we want to keep the landscape minimized, or the use of the land surface minimized. So what do we do to do this? We know we want a gantry crane type configuration, but it's going to be like a big 3D printer for crops. So what we do is we build out infrastructure. So it's going to not be tractors. So, how do we do this? We want to build a series of elevated rails. And where are we going to get the technology to build these elevated rails? Because we have this technology already, and it is for your amusement. So, the technology we need to build the elevated rails is already stress tested to hell. It already exists in climates that are subject to freeze and thaw cycles, and and the technology to underpin what we need for the rails comes from amusement parks of all the places, and that is roller coasters. So you have your roller coasters here with all your people going, you know. And this is how we build part of our infrastructure. Build our rails, we borrow from the entertainment venues and all the fine engineering that builds these elevated rails that can withstand a crap load of stress and strains, because this thing's moving like up to 50 miles an hour and going in loops and all that, and banking and yanking, and these rails are built to handle that. So the guys that know how to engineer these rails know that you have to build them deep enough underground and everything else to support this thing moving around on it, the little roller coaster cars, to do all this stuff. So we borrow this technology to build our elevated rails. So don't say we can't do it. We have the stuff to do it. So just making that point before we get here. Alright. So everything you need is existing already. It's just a matter of implementation. There might be stuff like patents to go around, but if they don't exist already, I'm sure somebody will see this and go, oh yeah, well, here's my prior art if it isn't patented already, okay? The idea is free for the taking. It should be a free-for-all in some way. So, we know we can do it. We know we can build the rails. That's just the groundwork there. One of the things. You borrow from an industry that already exists. In case of getting our elevator rail system, we borrow from roller coasters. Those guys will know how to build what we need next. So in the case of farming, our elevated rails will be something like up from the fields. They will be on towers like this. Our fields will have towers to elevate the rails. And they will be staggered, probably in the direction where they don't obscure the sun too much, and they all go out across the fields. And then we'll have the rails. Pardon my screwy drawing. It's I'm not using my 3D graphic stuff and taking all the sweet time to do it. I'm trying to do it quick and dirty. But you'll have a system like this, and then you'll probably have like little things to go in here that hold the actual rails, but it'll be supporting infrastructure, you know. And there'll be a whole bunch of these rail sets, these pillars. And not only do they run the rails, but they could probably run piping, and they will run infrastructure for electrification. And we can use local sources of power, solar, windmills, all that, because you're not having to carry a big stupid battery on the vehicle. So all your power comes through your rails. Keep that in mind. So all the power is on these rails, and they will be elevated. I'm drawing the U parts. I'm taking my time to draw it a little bit. And then on top of there, there'll be like the actual rails that actually run the vehicles. And what we are going to have is like a shuttle and transom system that runs on the rails for your farming. So all these things. Yeah, I know it's just concept art, the ugly version. This is the rough sketch. But I'm trying to get the idea across. And on these concepts, just like the gantry cranes, there will be things that lock onto the rails over on each side, just like your gantry crane idea. And then you will have another thing here. I should just draw it like stick drawing, but everything here and here. But these will ride on the rails. Maybe I'll do it in a different color just to make it more clear. We'll have this thing. And it'll be like a truss kind of thing on the truss. And these rails are kind of a foundation or the underpinning, because they're not just used for this. They are used for shuttles. The shuttles will take materials, so if I can pick a different color. Oh, is there a color I haven't used too much? Sorry if it looks weird, but it's just a different color. But the shuttles can take different materials to and from the gantry. I didn't mean to do that. What is it doing? This is my tablet is glitching. Oh shoot. So you can have shuttles, different types of shuttles, by the way. But you will have shuttles that run things on these rails, and they go to and from the gantry here. And the gantry itself will also have a shuttle. So you can have things coming and going. It can be grains, it can be seeds, it can be chemicals applied, maybe extra treatments, water. And these will go here. As part of the shuttle rail system, they can probably be automated. So these things can roll on here. And then you'll have this transom that rolls on here. And on the transom, it'll have its own type of service shuttle. So it'll be like a unit like this that rides, and it's electric powered, because it gets this electricity from the rails. And then this shuttle can actually drag what the tractors used to drag. So everything that there could be a guy riding in here, it could be automated. You'll have your ladders and stuff. And speaking of shuttles, you'll have your utility shuttles, which a person can ride on to get to and from. There may be like little ladders every so many places, because if you gotta inspect, service and stuff, you want a way to get up and down. Or you might have a folding ladder from the shuttle itself that can go up or down if it's a manned one, just so you can service, maintain, and all that. But the shuttle is just like your 3D printer, so this thing can drag all your farming equipment up and down the fields. So what you got is your system of your tillers, your cultivators, all that, your spreaders. It will be dragged up and down the fields by the shuttle that's electric powered. And it'll ride on this transom rail, and this transom will go across these supporting rails, which we borrowed the technology from the roller coaster industry because they already know how to deal with the weather and the expansion and the contraction and keeping intolerances while all that happens. They know how to do it. So we borrow. We don't have to develop it totally from scratch. We pull from another place that knows how to do it already. And this thing will be riding up and down the rails. And then you're wondering, like, okay, there's a limitation on the geometry, which you're probably thinking this thing's going to be heavy and all that, and it is. So there's going to be a limitation on sag, but we'll probably even want to go shorter than that because we want to have another trick up our sleeve. This, one of our shuttles has to be able to do this trick because that makes the utility of it all. And we can probably have a trick to move. Using this, we need a trick, so we need a few tricks. We need to be able to move this over here, so we use that. But the other trick is, so one of these shuttles has to be able to pick up things and move them from rail to rail across the fields, because they'll be utilitarian. And because these are part of infrastructure, these can shuttle along the rails to whatever building they need to unload from, like the main highway or something. And they're hooked up to your solar or your wind turbines or whatever for electricity. They'll have some kind of pipe for running water, so if you want to run the sprayers, hold on. You know, everything is going to be based on this. At some point. Are they getting there yet? I don't know. But I think this will be the next stage of farming technology. I think somebody could shake up the industry and do it before one of the big names does it. Just, you know, make it more accessible to farmers. Because it should be coming. It's a way to get your farms clean, and then you're not buying all the oil. The only petroleum products you need are like your fertilizer and your bug spray. But keeping your tractors running, you do it off your wind turbines on your location, and you're not paying anyone for your electricity if you do it, if you're smart about it, you know? So this thing will pay for itself. So this thing should probably have a way to go up and down so it can pick up here. Pardon my ugly drawing. Yeah, I'm trying to fix it. Yay. But that's your stuff. So what this has to be able to do, unfortunately I just can't erase it that easy, is the trick I'm talking about. So, oops, wrong color there. But this cab has to come over here, be able to lock on the rails. So he's now on the rails, right? And you got this transom, like once you're done doing whatever here, you might have your other equipment stowed on the rails somehow, hooked on there. And what this sucker will do is, there'll probably be couplings and motors to move the rails themselves. They'll need that capability as well. So as part of that system, this will unlock here. So, oops, wrong color. Erasing does not work for some reason. But so this unlocks and uncouples from the rail, and this red thing will lift up. And so the idea is, get rid of this transom. Well, it's not really getting rid of it. What we're able to do, and this is probably what's going to dictate its length, how big you can make it going across, other than the ability to support the slung loads and pull them across and drag them across the fields, is this sucker here, our little cab, shuttle cab, has to be able to pick that transom right up, and then it transfers this whole transom rail all the way across. So that way we can use this whole rail system. So this goes here, and then all the stuff on here will engage to that next rail over, and you can just move all the way up and down your farm fields with this little shuttle system. All your equipment. And he can move up and down. So you're not even worried about like your GPS because intrinsic to the system, it will know its location. You'll program it with a grid or whatever. You'll have your towers numbered and that like north, south, east, west, and all that. So it's kind of like you build the GPS into it. You don't need a GPS. You don't need to rely on it because all your motive power is coming from this shuttle and pulling on the rails and stuff. You're not going to be stuck in the dirt or the mud. You can probably do tilling and stuff in weather that you couldn't with the regular tractor because it always had to drive through it. So you can change your crops, do more things. So this is the system to electrify your rails. I know it's an ugly drawing, but sorry about that, but it can go across and do everything, and then eventually you're all the way over, and it's all the way over there with this other equipment, and then you got all your crops growing here. And you get everything growing here, and so this is the technology that needs to move forward, and I haven't seen any signs of it yet. It might be happening in Europe, it might be happening somewhere else. But these are the puzzle pieces that somebody needs to work on. And then this thing gets all the way over here. You might have couplings for a water line so he can drag a sprayer head or whatever. He can do all kinds of stuff. So you plug into here. This will provide your power and everything else. And you're powered by your little, not so little, wind turbines off in the horizon there going whoosh. Those things, and this is where all your power comes from. Right there, your wind turbines or your solar, whatever you got down here, off in the distance. But you're not bringing in your diesel fuel mess and all that crap. Your power for your farm comes adjacent in the landscape to run all this. And this will do its thing. And it will need people to maintain it. It's exposed to weather. It might get stuck. There might be a deer or something stupid on the field. You need to watch for these things, Like, it's not like going to do its thing, Like, without being watched. So it's not going to put everyone out of a job, but it will change the nature of the work. You have your deer out here. The antlers, see? Might get in there. So you got to have people to watch things and make sure it doesn't get sucked in the machine. And if something acts up, you have somebody to maintain it and work on it. So it will need people to operate. Jobs aren't going totally away. The idea is you can jump to these different elevated rails, power them with all your local production of electricity, and then you're not dealing with the batteries, and you're not dealing with the fuel, and it aligns to your crops and growing. You have your cameras and you can have your automation if you want it, or you could have people drive these things. But that's it. That's the future of farming when it gets to the next stage. It's not going to be electric tractors. It's going to be an infrastructure layout with these elevated rail systems with the shuttle and transom system that moves your materials and everything. It's just a matter of putting the puzzle pieces together. We have them. We can build this. So I'm curious as to when it's going to start, because I think that's going to be the next big thing in farming tech. Thoughts and opinions, and comment away. I know my drawings were ugly. Somebody could make a better video for it. Explain it with their AI voice or whatever. I don't care. It's just the concept is there, and I just want to say somebody else hasn't done it yet. I just wanted to put it out there. That's how it works. And there's my whiteboard drawing. The electric farm. far involves infrastructure. Yeah, so that's the next big thing in tech. There we go. That's the next big thing in agri-tech. When it comes, it's going to be kind of revolutionary. But you have to develop all this equipment that rides on the rails. We already know how to build the rails from the roller coasters. Those are in the Midwest where it freezes and thaws and rains and everything else with ground heave, so we know how to do that. Um, Building the big cranes and stuff, we know how to do that. Um, so it's just a matter of having these shuttles drag their equipment across and you can stow it and have service rides and other shuttles to move materials and all that, which this shuttle will pick up and spread on the fields. Or if it harvests crops, it can move the crops into one of those, and those things will drive off to the loading bay on the highway, or the silos. So we got this. Yeah. All right. Sorry. And now it's time for me to break the whiteboard again and finish the recording.